Alright guys, listen. I know I've been promising that the Taylor Swift review is going to be coming this week, and you will be getting it. However, Brockhampton's new album has been one of the ones I've been anticipating the most this year, and they happen to release it on the same day, so sorry, but a man's got his priorities. Either way, yes, Brockhampton is back with their 5th studio album, Ginger. Brockhampton, if you don't know already, they're a very popular hip-hop boy band, the all-American boy band themselves. These guys first caught fire back in 2017 with their Saturation trilogy of albums. I didn't really catch on to them until 2018, but when I did, I was really sold on this group's big, weird, experimental hip-hop, and I was sold on the fact that these guys were doing things that no boy band of this size should be able to do. There's like 6 vocalists in the group and about 15 people overall, something like that, and these guys were putting together some absolutely incredible experimental hip-hop that was often banging and often emotional. I always say there's 2 different types of Brockhampton songs, the bangers and the sad bops. And then last year was kind of a tumultuous year because Amir Van departed from the group because of reasons that we'll get into later in the video, because those reasons pop up on this album. But the group signed to a record label, RCA Records, and after having to scrap 2 albums, I believe, Team Effort and Puppy, Iridescence was what came of all of this drama and all of this record label signing. It was their major record label debut, and if you guys remember, I actually placed it on my year-end list last year because I adored it, and I continue to come back to it today. So of course, with how much I love Brockhampton, I was waiting very patiently and very excitedly for this new album. Oddly enough though, it feels like the promo cycle for this thing was a bit muted in comparison to some of the previous promo cycles. Yes, I know I jumped on the Brockhampton train a little late, but I remember that during the Saturation times, there were like some short films released, a couple non-album singles that people were hyping up, etc, etc. Obviously, I mentioned all the drama that happened before Iridescence, but beyond that, the boys had the Things We Lost in the Fire radio show, where they released 1997 Diana, 1998 Truman, and 1999 Wildfire, 3 singles that didn't end up making the final album. This time around, we didn't really get that. We got 4 singles, but all of them were included on the record, and there wasn't a bunch of big hoopla like with previous records. Your guess is as good as mine, but I kind of wonder if the fact that Kevin Abstract's album Arizona Baby had something to do with that, because Kevin was promoting that, and because several members of Brockhampton prop up on that album. Romil and Jabari handle some production, and then Joba and Bareface show up on the track Peach. By the way, Arizona Baby is a fantastic album, easily one of my top albums so far this year. If you haven't heard it yet, go give it a listen. But either way, I've loved what the group's put out so far, and I was super excited for this record, especially after listening to the early singles. I've Been Born Again, If You Pray Right, Boy Bye, and especially No Halo. I absolutely adored No Halo as soon as I heard it. So automatically, I just got myself more and more hyped for this album, and as it turns out, this may be one of the few times this year where I got myself hyped for an album and it actually delivered to my expectations. We've been in a kind of disappointing year for music, especially this summer. A lot of artists that I was hoping would drop great albums did not drop so great albums, but I can honestly say right now, Brockhampton's new album may be my personal favorite record of the year thus far. I know that's kind of a big thing to say, rather bold as well. I don't know how many people are going to agree, but I absolutely adore this album to bits. It's a 12-track album that's about 44 minutes in length, which is thus far easily the shortest Brockhampton full-length album to date. But regardless of how short it is, the boys have really tightened things up and come through with such an incredible record that is often raw, personal, super exciting, super emotional, and it features all the boys in top form, because we get consistently great performances from Kevin, Dom, Matt, Joba, Bareface, and of course, Melon! As I mentioned, I love No Halo, and that's ironically the starter to the album, given that it was the last of the 4 pre-release singles. But even though it's been out for the shortest time of those singles, it's the one that's really growing to be one of my favorite overall Brockhampton songs. I just can't stop replaying it. I love the mellow and emotional feel of it, from the super sticky hook from guest vocalist Deb Never, as well as the contributions from Matt and Merlin, and I really love every single performance on this thing. Ryan Beatty is a guest vocalist here, and he has this rather harrowing intro that fits well up against the acoustic guitars. Matt's flows are super fast and super catchy. Merlin really knocks it out of the park with a charismatic verse and great singing on the chorus. Kevin's short appearance is nice and fits well with Deb Never's chorus. Dom and Joba's verses are raw and fascinating, and of course, he's probably my favorite member of Brockhampton, to be honest. Bareface rounds it out with those signature beautiful vocals we've come to expect out of him. Then from there we get Sugar, which again Ryan Beatty returns for, before. It's an emotional, somewhat R&B influenced track about youthful relationships and drug use. Ryan Beatty kicks it off with a bang with these really catchy and sticky melodies on the hook. The song has this smooth feel that kind of reminds me a little bit of a throwback. Dom's auto-tune assisted verse is really strong, and Matt's verse retains the slick, rapid-fire flows that were on the last track. And Kevin's childlike vocals are also really compelling here. And of course, on a song like this, you need some bare-faced vocals, and he comes through with them, crooning beautifully towards an anonymous lover and rounding out yet another beautiful track. Then we get to one of the bigger pre-release tracks, Boy Bye, which moves away from the emotional feel of the first few tracks for a more quirky, trap-influenced banger. One that's really impressive for how substantial it feels in spite of its short length. It's only 2 minutes and 22 seconds, but each member of the group is here and they contribute something to the song. And their performances blend so perfectly. Dom, Matt, and Kevin all have this really bouncy, rapid-fire flow, and each of them ride the beat so perfectly. Matt and Merlin's vocal interplay on the chorus is great. Bareface's verse, while short, has some clever and pretty hard-hitting bars. I really like that trauma the price for the patient's character shaped like an arc line. And I really love Joba's beautiful and bashful singing at the very end of the song. Just rounds out the song and adds a nice different layer, finishing it out in style. Then we get to Heaven Belongs to You. At just a minute and a half, it's kind of an interlude-esque track that doesn't feature any one member of the group. It only features vocal contributions from English rapper Slow Tie, as he raps about mental health on what's essentially an extension of the album's second single, If You Pray Right. Weird that it comes before it, but either way, I like the kind of skeletal production on this one. It's got a dark and haunting feel to it, and I think that Slow Tie's verse is charismatic and memorable, even despite its short length. It's one of those rare short songs that feels fulfilling and worthy of repeat listens, despite being just about a minute and a half. Then we have the more braggadocious track St. Perry, where the boys tout everything from their sex appeal to their youthful nature on this lo-fi, more raw and hard-hitting track. I love how weird, minimal, and off-kilter the instrumentals are. The sampled chorus is beautiful and very smooth, and it blends very well with the song. Kevin's verse is very cutthroat, Matt's flows are really strong and bouncy, Dom's verse is super chilling and dark, Bareface brings his own unique and clever flow to the song, and of course Merlin's trademark energy is always welcome. Then we get to that second single, If You Pray Right, which tackles a lot of different religious themes from Buddhism to Jehovah's Witnesses. The boys rap over this grand instrumental that's built around this interesting trombone melody. I love Dom's rhymes and his constantly changing flows. Kevin's chorus is super catchy, and I love the varied feel of it between the hook and the post-chorus. Matt and Merlin show some great chemistry, and Joba gives us this kind of unstructured, unfiltered verse that's definitely one of the highlights of the song. There's also a beat switch towards the end that's also very dark, and Kevin's filtered vocals add to that very well, so despite being a pretty long track at about 5 minutes, it never gets boring and it continues to twist and turn really well, delivering on all fronts. Then we get into Dearly Departed, which is perhaps one of the most raw and honest tracks on the album. This one, by and large, feels like a response to Amir, who was kicked out of the group last year because of his various acts of verbal, mental, and sexual abuse. I had mentioned we were going to talk about it later in the video. That's what it was. This isn't the first time that members of the group have talked about this, because several lines on Iridescence were kind of interpreted as subliminals towards him, and Kevin openly addressed Amir on the track Corpus Christi from Arizona Baby. But this is the first time the group really tackles the issue head on, no holes barred, no subtlety. This is about Amir. It's an ethereal, heavenly track with a great unstructured flow from Kevin, a beautifully sung chorus from Joba, and some interesting erratic flows from Matt. But Dom's verse is a particularly brutal moment. Not only does he slow down his flow, but he also talks about a situation where Amir set up a friend of his to be robbed. Throughout the verse, you could just hear the anger and the hatred in his voice, especially at the end as he refers to Amir as a motherfucker, then kind of just chucks his headphones off and throws something else in the room. It's honestly just one of the most poignant and emotional moments on the album, as we hear these brutal and raw lyrics up against this really dreamy instrumental, and ultimately it proves to be yet another huge highlight in the group's discography, perhaps one of their best songs. And then we have the lead-off single, I've Been Born Again, which, continuing with the irony, the lead-off single for the album is the last of the 4 singles to appear on the album. Odd. Either way, it's another dark and upbeat banger, kicked off by this chilly whispered verse from Bareface. Crazy different direction, and I really like it. From there, Kevin's got this really long but bouncy verse. Merlin has a short yet energetic appearance with one of the funniest lyrics on the project. She's so bad I let her touch my butt. Shout out to Merlin. Dom's verse has some slick flows. Joba is a real standout thanks to the dark and and brooding filters on his voice that complement his performance really well, and Matt's outro has this catchy melody that could have worked as a great chorus. And even though it isn't used that way, it rounds out the song perfectly and it stands tall with the rest of the tracks on the album. Then the title track, Ginger, moves back to the more melancholy and emotional feel. It still does have some erratic and off-kilter production that really works well. The reverb-heavy moments feel right at home against the very sticky beat, and the performances remain super strong. Kevin's more melodic filter-assisted vocals are smooth and immediate. Matt's varied performance is made better by the auto-tune filters. Bareface's vocals still shine despite the heavy use of filters, and they kind of throw me back to Nightcore a little bit. And Dom's short singy moments are a nice touch as well. Being the title track, expectations were going to be high on this one, and I could say it definitely lives up to them. Then we move to Big Boy, another more dark and mellow song that tackles themes of masculinity and growing up, and the instrumental retains the light and lovely feel of many of the group's more low-key tracks. Kevin's vocal filters are strong as they give me these nice emotional R&B vibes that you might get out of some of today's bigger artists. Joba's verse feels raw and really cutthroat. You can feel the pain in his voice on this song, and Bareface effortlessly switches between his filter-assisted rapping and very beautiful and memorable vocals as well. Just another beautiful track. Then there's Love Me for Life, which wasn't a single but was initially teased through an Instagram video. I thought it was going to be a single, but I guess not. And it's a track that tackles some slightly darker themes like loneliness and isolation from the world. It's got a more banging and electronic instrumental that feels low-key, yet still twisty and different than other songs that the group's done before. Kevin's slower flow is super catchy. I love Joba's melodic and singy feel. Merlin's verse is fast-paced and oozing with the energy and screamy feel that we've come to love from him. And Bareface's singing moment, though short, is as lovely as it's always been. And I could definitely say I adore this one, especially given that I was looking forward to it so much after the Instagram video. The closer to this record, Victor Roberts, is once again centered around a different artist, as it features Victor Roberts II talking about his family history with the LAPD and his experiences bringing someone into his house only to get caught up in his dealings with crack cocaine. But unlike Heaven Belongs to You though, Victor Roberts II isn't the only artist on here. Kevin, Bareface, and Ryan Beatty show up, and the fact that Ryan Beatty opens and closes this record kind of feels like an interesting bookend to me. I love the light pianos and the ethereal instrumentals on this one. Victor Roberts II's flow and vocal inflection kind of remind me a bit of J. Cole, and I love that his flows are constantly switching as he tells the story with such raw emotion to the point where you can really hear his voice cracking throughout this one. Kevin's chorus is well sung and gives tribute to those that have stayed with him. Bareface's short appearance has more fantastic vocals as he encourages someone to love themselves, and Ryan Beatty's delicate vocals round out this one beautifully. It's honestly to the point where this track nearly brought me to tears. That's how much I loved it. I don't know how these guys keep doing it, but they're in a groove where it feels like to me they can do no wrong. Brockhampton delivers once again with Ginger, crafting a record that's intimate, personal, mature, and emotional, yet still retaining that youthful spirit that made Brockhampton so appealing in the first place. The album constantly comes through with tracks that have fantastic, memorable, and sticky production, whether it's banger Brockhampton or sad bop Brockhampton. The vocal performances all throughout this thing are top-notch. Each member of the group is in peak form here. And again, this album handles occasionally difficult themes with aplomb. Even now, the group continues to redefine their sound, and they continue to create beautifully honest and oftentimes raw tracks that just beg for repeat listens. This was definitely one of my most anticipated albums this year, and after what's been a pretty disappointing summer for music, I'm glad that this is what's helping to close it out, and I'm glad that it not only lived up to my expectations, but surpassed them in each and every sense of the word. I'm not even going to list favorite or least favorite tracks. I love all the tracks. I dislike none of them. This album gave me everything I wanted. I'm very happy with it, and of course I'm going to give it an excellent rating. Should be obvious from how much I've been gushing about it, so go listen to this album. I hope you'll love it as much as I did. But that is just my opinion on this album. What did you guys think about it? Did you love it, hate it, were you indifferent towards it? Where do you think it ranks among Brockhampton's albums? And I'll also ask this, who's your favorite member of Brockhampton? I mentioned earlier that mine is Bareface, but who is yours? Sound off down in the comments section. Let's keep this civil and have some fun as we like to do. If you want to hit like and subscribe, thanks. If not, I get it. I'm no beggar. And of course, I did write out my script for the Taylor Swift album review, so once I turn off this recording, I will record that review, and I'll try to have that up just as soon as this one is done. So stay tuned for those. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.